Muy buenas a todos, tranquilos, tranquilos. Esta semana no hay intro mía haciendo los gilipollas porque, bueno, esta es una intro especial, entre otros motivos porque nos vamos hasta septiembre. El equipo de la arena, formado por Sergi y yo, Sergi se le ocurre un montón con las intros, así que kudos para él. Nos pegamos unas pequeñas vacaciones y antes de ello me gustaría deciros a todos vosotros que gracias de verdad por el recibimiento que habéis hecho a esta nueva sección de Meristation, a la arena, de la cual me siento muy orgulloso y muy agradecido a todos vosotros, porque, si os soy sincero, cuando Nacho me dijo allá por principios de año, oye, ¿por qué no haces una sección, tío, hablando de lo tuyo, de lo que tú sabes, de lo que pasa en Reddit, en Twitch, las últimas novedades indie, ¿por qué no hablas de todo eso? Y le dije, tío, ¿tú crees que eso tiene cabida hoy en día en YouTube? Digo, en un sector donde lo que se premia es hablar sobre la verdad de los videojuegos sin saber lo que es Katamari Damacy, y donde se premia meterse por el culo con tal de llamar la atención. Digo, yo no sé si esto va a funcionar. Total, que sí que funcionó, y gracias a vosotros. Os digo, volvemos en septiembre. Mi idea es que en esta segunda temporada añadamos cosas nuevas, no sé, quizá gameplays de juegos indies que yo estoy probando cada semana. Quizá nuevas secciones como la de hoy, que ahora os hablaré de ella. La idea es seguir evolucionando, seguir haciendo un programa que guste, un programa donde podamos debatir profundamente sobre los temas que quizá no se tocan de forma más general y que sigamos creando esta comunidad, especialmente de peceros, de la que estoy tan orgulloso y de la que estoy tan contento. Así que, sin más, nos vamos, pero no antes sin dejaros un regalito que me hace especial ilusión, que el último capítulo de esta temporada sea con una entrevista a Jon Romero. ¡Sí! Entrevistamos a Jon Romero en la Game Lab y estuvimos hablando de todo, de los juegos de hoy en día, de cómo ha cambiado todo, de Black Room. O sea, creo que para finalizar la temporada nada mejor que hacerlo de la mano de quien creó a Wolfenstein, a Doom, a Quake, a los grandes, al inventor de un género. Así que sin más, os dejo con la entrevista a Jon Romero, espero que la disfrutéis y os espero aquí, en la arena, en septiembre. ¡Hasta luego!
Well, development process is pretty much the same. You know, in the game industry, you use a certain technology, you either develop or you license or whatever. And you're using the technology. There's a certain way that you build the game, and it's different for every engine. Unity, you do things a certain way. Unreal, you do things a certain way. You build your own engine, you do things the way that you define, and that hasn't changed. That's been the same since the beginning of making games in the early 80s. So all that's changed really is the solidification of some of the engines that are out there being more, more standardized. You know, like Unreal and Unity are like the two top standardized engines that are extremely multifunction and have their own really good strengths, and so that's not different. Gameplay and game designs have changed over the years because people have been exploring new ways of making shooters or any other kind of game. In some areas, lots of people like, and but the original way that you played Doom or Quake is still really great. There's no reason why you can't have a game like that nowadays. That just has better graphics. I think the new Doom is kind of close to that. We haven't really done from back in the day. There's been so many games, the engines are getting so much better. It's easier to put lots of cool stuff on the screen now than it was back then. So back then it was really like, how great of a programmer are you to get this thing running 60 frames? And nowadays it's like, what can you think about? Like, what is the thing that you can think about that's exciting to people? Because putting stuff on the screen is not the issue anymore, right? It's the game design. So can you come up with something that's exciting for people to play? Okay. Left the business.
Oh, well.
I've been in the business the entire time. So the interesting thing is, like, let's say before Wolfenstein, you remember what we were doing before Wolfenstein? So we did software before Wolfenstein. We made a shitload of games. Like, we made so many games before Wolfenstein, probably 16 games, maybe something like that. And before then, I had been making games for 10 years, so Wolfenstein was game number 87 for me. I've made and published dozens and dozens and dozens of games, and they were not shooters, right? They were all kinds of other kinds of games. And so when I finished Daikatana in 2000, I started making a whole bunch of other games like I used to make, right? Like shooters was just this little area, and so I've still been making lots of other games. I spent 4 years making an MMORPG. I've made Facebook games. I've made all kinds of stuff. Match 3 games, adventure, puzzle hybrids. Gunman Taco Truck is the latest one. It's a mobile game, pretty fun. So I really like just game design. And when we were making Doom and Quake and all that, it was like you're going through a level and trying to get to the exit to get to the next level. And then Quake was the same way. It also had multiplayer, and then lots of people played multiplayer, maybe didn't play the single player as much. And so with Black Room, it is similar in that I'm basically making a game more similar to Half-Life 2, with a story, right? It has this really cool story and lots of crazy locations in it, and in-game, I guess, cinematics, the way Half-Life 2 does cinematics, where you're in the area and characters are talking to you, you can just do whatever you want, you can pay attention or you cannot pay attention. You're still in 3D moving around doing whatever you want. So it's a game that is kind of telling the story, you're going through it, the way that Half-Life 2 is a big adventure, big roller coaster. And this is a completely different story. It's a different way of interfacing with the game than just
because you are the chief engineer of this holographic simulation company, and so you go into simulation and start controlling. The cynicism is just a function of the platform and the way that things have been performed, right? Like if people aren't delivering the indie games that they were promised on time, people will become cynical, right? But I've never made it. I've never done a Kickstarter myself before, and I didn't think that everybody needed to see a gameplay demo of this new game before they would decide to fund it. They didn't need to see one for Bloodstained. They saw Castlevania. Because we make a new Castlevania. It's like, well, Doom and Quake, we make a new one. But it didn't work, right? It didn't work, so, it could have worked, but we just decided 3 days in, people want a gameplay demo, why don't we just make a gameplay? So we just stopped it after 3 days. And so we're working on the gameplay demo, and something really good. And so we'll have a video at some point to show you how cool the game looks and plays and stuff. If you want to make games, there's a lot of people that I see, they say that they want to make games, that they can't wait to go to college and learn how to do it, right? And I just tell them, do it right now. Go home, start making games now. You don't need permission to make games, right? Just like you don't need permission to play cards. Go home and play cards. Like, you don't need permission, just start doing it. And to start doing it, you need to start somewhere. And you want to start easy, and you don't want to jump into the deep end where you're going to hate making it. You're going to hate C++ or whatever. So I always tell people, get Corona SDK. Start simple, start 2D, download coronalabs.com, Corona SDK. The language that you use to program in it is called Lua, and it is simpler than C. It's very simple, but it's a fully powerful programming language that does